Welcome, friends. I'm Chris. I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness. Welcome to Poise and Pen. This is our weekly mindfulness and prompted journaling practice. So today we're going to work on mindfulness of emotions, and it's a little different in that most of the time I try to introduce practices that are research tested. So the sort of thing that people like Dr. John Kabat-Zinn have studied and incorporated into his mindfulness-based stress reduction program. So we're going to start today with a couple of Eastern meditation practices, and then we're going to morph that into mindfulness of emotions practice, and then we'll get into our prompted journaling practice. So what I think you'll need to be safe and enjoy your practice, get the most out of your practice today. A journal, of course, a couple of writing implements. I have pens. You could use anything that you like. Reading glasses, if you need them, they're important for me. You may not need them at all. And a comfortable seated position. So you'll see behind me here, I have a cushion on a blanket in the carpeted area of my bedroom. That's fine for me. You may or may not need the bolster. It doesn't have to be on the floor. You could sit on your sofa. You could sit at your desk. You could sit at a kitchen chair. So if you're going to sit and elevate your hips significantly, like well up beyond the level of a bolster, I'd encourage you to find a seat where you can comfortably rest your feet on the earth. So pause the recording, gather up all your materials, and then I'll see you on your seat here in just a couple of minutes. Good morning, friends. Welcome back. So the first practice that we're going to use today is a Tibetan Buddhist practice. It's called Tonglen. And Tonglen is thought to be part of the path of the Bodhisattva. So let me take a minute before we get started with the practice, and let me tell you about the metaphor of the Bodhisattva. In Tibetan Buddhism, the Bodhisattva is thought to be a fully awakened being. So in this metaphor, this is a being who has gone through multiple lifetimes, has learned lessons along the way, and has finally figured out how to live her life in a manner that's free from suffering. So the metaphor of heaven in Buddhism is called nirvana. So it's said that Bodhisattva is free from suffering now. She's standing at the gates of nirvana, and she's ready to pass through. But instead of doing that, she consciously and intentionally turns around and walks back into the world of suffering, intent on shepherding every other sentient being through first. So that is an impossible task. She knows it's an impossible task, and yet she chooses to walk back into the world of suffering regardless. That is her dharma, her duty. So as you can imagine, in Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva is sort of the quintessential symbol for selflessness. So in this practice today, in this Tonglen practice, what I'm going to cue you to do is we're going to go through several difficult emotions, really troubling emotions. And I'm going to cue you 3 times to inhale each of those emotions, and I'm going to cue you to exhale them. So the principle is that we're consciously and intentionally drawing these difficult emotions into ourselves, and then consciously and intentionally exhaling what I think of as reciprocal emotions back out into the world to make the world a kinder, better place for every other sentient being. Right. So whatever your emotional response is to this practice, I've heard lots of different things. It can be like whatever your emotional response is okay. All right. So the other thing that can be triggering for people here, sometimes, like if I say fear is the difficult emotion, and then I cue you to exhale, what I just told you was that this reciprocal emotion, which to me is curiosity. That may not be the reciprocal emotion to you. And for some people, I've seen people get stuck and go, I don't know what to do with this. Curiosity is definitely not the opposite of fear. That's fine. Don't worry about that, friend. Whatever you view the reciprocal emotion of fear to be, that's what I'd like you to exhale out and to share into the world. All right, so I'm gonna set you up, and then I'm going to invite the chime. I'll give you a few mindfulness cues to get us started, and then we'll get started with the Tonglen practice. So come into a comfortable seated position. Wherever that seated position is, stack the joints, float your head over your shoulders, over your hips. And then on your next inhale, I'd like you to take the deepest breath of your day so far today. So press down into your seat, grow out of both your heart in the crown of your head for the heavens. And then as you exhale, maintain that length in your spinal column. Exhale, let all your soft tissues fall down toward the earth. Your eyes can be gently closed. That doesn't feel safe for every person. Open with a soft gaze is also 100% okay. It's a comfortable, natural breath. You don't have to do anything special to manipulate or change the breath at all. And I'm going to invite the chime. So during this practice today, I'll offer you the emotion first, the difficult emotion. I'd like you to sit with that for a breath or two. Notice if you have anything come up in your body. Notice where that comes up. Notice what the sensation is like. And again, we will inhale and exhale 3 times. So the first time will be for yourself. The second time will be for your community. The third time will be for the whole world. And the first emotion that we're going to work with today is disappointment. On your next inhale, I'd like you to draw in all the disappointment you've ever experienced. Exhale acceptance to yourself. Inhale, draw in the disappointment of your entire community. Exhale acceptance to everyone you know. Inhale, draw in all the world's disappointment. Exhale acceptance to every sentient being. Draw in a deep, deep inhale through your nose. Hold it at the top. Exhale through your mouth, make a ha sound. Ah. Anger. On your next inhale, draw in your whole life's worth of anger, all in one breath. Big, big breath. Exhale peace for yourself. Inhale, draw in the anger of everyone you know. Exhale peace to your community. On an inhale, draw in the anger of every sentient being of all times. Exhale peace for the whole world. Draw in a deep, life-affirming inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Ah. Resentment. Inhale all of your resentment. Exhale gratitude for yourself. Inhale the resentment of everyone you know. Exhale, gratitude to your community. Inhale all the world's resentment. Exhale, gratitude for every sentient being. Draw in a deep, deep breath. And then exhale through your mouth. Ah, fear. Inhale every bit of fear you've experienced in your entire life. Exhale curiosity to yourself. Inhale the fear of everyone you know. Exhale curiosity to your community. Inhale all the world's fear. There's a lot. Bring it all in. Exhale curiosity to every sentient being. On your next inhale, draw in a deep, deep breath. Exhale, let it go. Ah, doubt. Inhale all of your doubt from now and all times. Exhale faith for yourself. Inhale the doubt of your entire community. Exhale faith to everyone you know. Inhale all the world's doubt. Exhale faith for every sentient being. Draw in a deep, deep breath. And then open your mouth, let that all go. Ah, guilt. On an inhale, draw in your entire life's worth of guilt. Exhale your innocence. Inhale your community's guilt. Exhale innocent, the innocence of everyone you know. Inhale, draw in the guilt of every sentient being. Exhale all the world's innocence. Draw in a deep, deep breath. Exhale, let it go. Ah, shame. On your next inhale, take in all the shame you've experienced over the entire course of your life. Exhale empathy to yourself. Inhale the shame of everyone you know. Exhale empathy to your whole community. Your next inhale, draw on the shame of every sentient being. Like fear, there's a lot, so this will be a big, big inhale. Exhale empathy to the whole world. Draw on a deep, 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 deep breath. Exhale, let that all go. Just breathe and sit with anything that's come up with you for, say, 7 or 8 breaths. Anytime you have a thought float into your consciousness, into your awareness, recognize it for what it is, thinking, and no need to push it away. I just ask that you not attach to it, let it float away on its own. All right, I'm gonna invite the chime. Now I'll invite you, if your eyes are closed down, gently blink your eyes open. Bring your awareness back first to the room around you, and maybe the people in the room, even on the Zoom screen with us. So I'll be curious to hear what that experience was like for you. And no, once again, whatever your emotional response is to that Tonglen meditation is okay. There are times where it feels really good for me to be selfless like this. But I've guided this meditation, lots of people who reported afterwards, that was completely overwhelming, right? I'm carrying enough of my own stuff in my life right now that the idea of me taking in all the world's fear, all the world's anger, all the world's shame, it's too much. That's okay. This is not the right practice for us in every season of our lives. But it is, I think it's a beautiful practice, and it is a good barometer. And it also it's thought to help us develop greater compassion. So it's been a great part of my practice, and I hope it's one that you'll enjoy as well. So one thing that you may have noticed, I had asked you, we talked through the emotion, if you had some kind of a visceral embodied response, to notice what that was. That could be a really good indicator of if we have a habitual or a default difficult emotion that comes to us. Like sometimes that'll come up too when we are trying to sit in silence, or maybe we've got some alone time. Some of the reasons that people keep habitually busy and calendars too full is because when we sit alone, some of these difficult emotions arise, and it can be really tough without some good support to sit with. So if you noticed one of those, we addressed disappointment, anger, resentment, fear, doubt, guilt, shame. If you found one or more of those, I've got two or three that can be really troubling for me, fear and shame in particular. Um, Notice where those things are, right? So another way to think about this is, if we think about the demons or the scars associated with the chakra system, right? One of the ways that I currently understand the chakra system is, when these scars come up, if it's your habitual or your default difficult emotion, that's probably an indication where we're out of balance, where either the flow of energy is blocked or stagnant, it's deficient, or it's excessive, right? So if you think about this from the chakra system, at the root chakra, at the base of the spine, Muladhara, the scar associated with Muladhara is fear, right? If we move up a few inches, we come to Swadhisthana. That's the sacral chakra. The scar or the demon associated with the sacral chakra is guilt. And then if we move up a few inches more, to Manipura, solar plexus chakra, the scar that's associated with this chakra is shame. Move up further still, Anahata, the heart chakra, the scar is grief. Further still, Vishuddha, throat chakra, the scar are lies. Move up further still, Ajna, this is third eye, the scar is illusion. And then to the crown of the head, Srahasrara, this is crown chakra, the chakra of 1,000 petals. The demon or the scar is attachment. So if going through those, you find something that's a default for you, that can be really useful. So what I'd like you to think about, and just take 5 or 6 breaths. Let's take a full minute. I want you to think about when this default difficult emotion comes up for you. What's your habitual response to it? And if you can, it's really easy to get into judgment, blaming, and shaming around how we respond to our difficult emotions, right? Nothing worse than feeling shame over the way that we process our shame. So, what I'd like you to do is see if you can look at what your default response is, but view it through a lens of curiosity and kindness. All right. So, once again, if it's comfortable for you to close down your eyes, feel free to close down your eyes gently or keep them open with a soft gaze. I'm going to invite the chime, and then I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to sit with that. And I'd like you to think about what is your default response to your most habitual difficult emotions. If your eyes are closed down, gently blink them open. Once again, start to take in the room that you're in, the contents of the room. If there are other people with whom you're sharing the room, take them in as well. All right, so now you've had a chance to think through, at least on a preliminary basis, what's the default way that I address my difficult emotions? And I'm going to tell you a couple of stories, and then we'll take an opportunity if you figured out what your default difficult emotion is, to pick one of those, and then we'll try to hold that in a way that's skillful. This is a practice, and it for most people it's really iterative, and it takes time and a lot of love and patience, and often therapy. Right, but in the story is in the metaphor of Buddhism, it's said that Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, sat under the Bodhi tree for 40 days and 40 nights, seeking enlightenment. And during that whole period, that whole 40 days and 40 nights, he was under a constant assault by Mara. So in the mythology of Buddhism, the devil character is played by Mara. So Mara's job description is to prevent people from waking up. Mara prevents people from becoming enlightened. So it's said that Mara played every trick in his playbook on Siddhartha, and Mara's clever. So Mara even came up with some brand new tricks he'd never tried before. So he tried lust, he tried guilt, he tried fear, anger, shame, doubt. He tried all these different tricks. And it was really hard for Siddhartha. But what Siddhartha found is that with practice, he got better at recognizing Mara when he ran up. And then he had a chance to start experimenting with ways that he could greet Mara. And he found one way that if he greeted Mara in a particular way, Mara would respond in a very predictable way. So what that was is Mara would be running up to Siddhartha to play a trick on him, and Siddhartha would say, "I see you, Mara. Come sit for tea." And when greeted in that way, Mara would turn around and run in the opposite direction. So what does it look like to sit and invite a difficult emotions to have tea with us, right? And how does that contrast with our habitual response, right? Your habitual response may be really different from mine, but I'll tell you a couple of mine. Like what I find for me, the lower chakra scars, so fear, guilt, and shame are really common for me. Grief is one that comes up sometimes too, but it's less frequent than fear, guilt, and shame. I feel like as a man in our current society, our current culture in the United States, fear doesn't have a very good public face. So if I'm not careful, what typically happens is one of two things. One, I'll try to camouflage that emotion, and I'll try to make it look like something else. So I might take my fear, I'll give it the exact same haircut as my anger. I'll pull a sweater out of my anger's closet. I'll throw it on my fear, and then I'll usher it out into the world. There you see, I'm not fearful afterwards. I'm simply angry, right? The hiccup with this is twofold. First of all, most people are not fooled by this, particularly anybody who's already walked this path ahead of us and has learned to recognize these things in themselves. They pretty much know that fear is happening. But also, we're not addressing our fear. We're not allowing ourselves to process this difficult emotion. So the fear is still there. The other way is that we deny it. So we disown the difficult emotion. So this comes up with me sometimes with anger. So I'll have situations and a circumstance come up, and I'll have an angry, it's often internal, but sometimes external response. And then the emotion that comes up is associated with that is shame. So I feel shame over feeling anger. And the story within myself is, how can I feel angry? I'm a yoga practitioner. For goodness sake, I teach yoga to people. Sometimes I'm in traffic driving to a yoga class and I'm angry, right? How can I feel angry? I'm a yoga teacher. I'm sharing yoga, this beautiful practice with people, right? So when we do that, again, we're not allowing ourselves to experience that emotion. We're stuffing it into a little black sack. It ends up bubbling out in really weird, dysfunctional ways, looking like resentment, looking like cutting remarks to the people in our lives that are not deserved and that are unkind. So we end up with these outcomes that we never would have consciously chosen for ourselves if we'd stop to think about it. Right. So if that's not the right way, what is? And as near as I can tell, if I've tried all the shortcuts, friends, and if I find one, I'll tell you what it is. But my best understanding right now, and I don't get this right every time, but the best path past, around the difficult emotions is through them. So we have to take the time to allow ourselves to feel that. And that's what I think Siddhartha meant when he invited Mara to come and sit for tea with him. So like part of this for me is the embodied sensation. Where's the embodied sensation of your default difficult emotion, right? So if you haven't noticed that before, part of our next exercise, I don't want you to attract and manifest this emotion if you don't have it coming up. But if it's habitual, if you think about it, it's probably going to be there, right? It's probably right under the surface for you. But another good cue is with the chakra system. So for one example, Muladhara, the root chakra at the base of the pelvic floor, one of the ways that I found when I first started a mindfulness practice, I realized I couldn't distinguish my emotions. I thought everything was anger, right? And I do feel anger sometimes. It feels like a constrictive emotion in my chest, like a closed fist around my heart. But what happens for me more often is a really tight, constrictive emotion in the base of my spine and the pit of my belly, right? So that's for me, I associate that with fear. So if you don't have another way of knowing where you feel it in your body may help you identify that. There's a physical response to that, right? The iliopsoas engages in a fight or flight response. So that feeling, that constriction in the base of our spine is probably the physical embodiment of what we're feeling. But nonetheless, that's where I feel that emotion. So whatever the emotion is for you and wherever you feel it, if you notice it, like notice first when your habitual response comes up. Maybe you try to camouflage it. Maybe you try to disown it and push it away or stuff it into the little black sack, right? Those are three strategies, coping strategies we try to use that are dysfunctional coping strategies. Notice your urge to take this habitual response and then consciously step back. So you have to be the observer. Notice where you're feeling it in the body. And then maybe start by just saying those words to it. I see you, fear. I see you, fear. Come sit for tea. And then just sit with it and see what happens. Right. So I'm going to invite the chime and I'm going to ask you to consider what your difficult emotion is. And then I'm just going to give you a few minutes of silence to sit with it. Notice what comes up. Again, if you kick back into your default response, whatever your emotional response is okay. Just notice that. I just want you to be the observer. All right, so close down your eyes or open with a soft gaze. Lengthen along your spinal column again. I'll invite the chime twice, once to begin and once at the end. So if you've self-identified what your default difficult emotion is, bring that emotion to your mind. And maybe the emotion comes up, maybe you're able to view it with a little bit more objectivity and neutrality right now. Either way is okay. But if it comes up, feel for the embodied sensation. Where do you feel that sensation in your body? Notice what your response is. Maybe that urge for that default response. Most of the time, we've been doing this for a long time. So to change our response is going to take practice. Right? But if your default response starts to come up, just notice that. And then I invite you, only if it feels okay for you, only if it feels appropriate, look at that difficult emotion again and choose a different response that looks something like your version of, I see you, Mara, come sit for tea. Eyes are closed down, blink your eyes open. Great job, friends. That is difficult. It's difficult. This is the warrior's path. The path that you're on right now is the warrior's path. So grab your journal and we'll go through in just a moment here our prompted journaling questions for today. All right, friends, welcome back. So the mindfulness of emotion journaling prompts for today are: what was your emotional response to the Tonglen meditation? I already mentioned it's a really it can be a really difficult practice for people. In particular, the intention of taking in difficult emotions for yourself, your community, in the world. How did that feel for you? The second question: did you notice one or more default or habitual difficult emotion? Right? And if so, what was it? Or if you had more than one, what were they? The third set of questions: what's your habitual response to that difficult emotion, your default? If the instruction to sit with the emotion is not your default, how did the experience of taking some time and sitting with it, inviting it to tea, how did that feel? In the last question, and for me, this may be the toughest one: what steps can you take right now to make staying with the difficult emotion happen for you more often? So pause your recording, grab your journal, your pen, come up with some responses to the questions, and then whenever you're ready, you can press play again. I will share my responses with you. So I'll be back with you here in just a few minutes. All right, welcome back, friends. Great job. So what I'll do, I'll share my responses. They may or may not have any value for you, but I'll share like what my take is on these things. Um, Understanding that you're doing this practice through a recording, I would still love it to make this as interactive as you would like it to be. So one, getting that kind of feedback helps direct the future practices that I'll choose for us to do as a community. But also I love to hear how other people are responding to the practices and what your growth and what your path looks like. So feel free to text me 281-728-3896. You can email me, Chris at transformationnationyogaandwellness.com, or message me on either Instagram or Facebook. All right, so the first question: what was your emotional response to the Tonglen meditation? And in particular, how did the intention of taking in difficult emotions feel for you? Um, so I love the Tonglen practice, right? And I have had times where it felt overwhelming to me, but most of the time, and certainly today, my response, actually, if I'm honest, was a bit of pride. Um, I don't know if you've had that experience, like you do a small thing for another person that maybe makes their life a little bit better, and having a sense of satisfaction and feeling good like you've done something. It may have been small, but it was still important and significant. That's how I feel about the Tonglen practice and the idea of initiating a positive vibration to myself, to all the people I know that are in my community, and to every sentient being in our world. It feels really good to me. Um, did you notice one or more default or habitual difficult emotions? And if so, what were they? For me, this is a clear yes. So fear, guilt, shame, the lower chakra stars for me are most common. Grief and anger come up for me fairly frequently too. Grief is one that's interesting. I think, again, it's one that doesn't have a great public face for men. And I've just started realizing it's coming up more often than I ever would have thought before. That being said, it's still not the default. The defaults are the fear, guilt, and shame. Um, so the instructions to sit with the emotion, I'm working on automating that as a default. It's not right now. So how was that experience for me? It feels really scary, and it feels really overwhelming at first. Right. So my habitual responses, as I mentioned, camouflage, deny, or stuff down. Just don't deal with it. So the process of sitting with it can be really, really scary. It can be really, really overwhelming at first. But I find when I do that, it changes for me really quickly and starts to feel almost peaceful. And I'm able to to feel a sense of compassion for both myself, compassion for the emotion, which I've dealt with so harshly over the almost 50 years of my life. That feels really good. And I feel a degree of neutrality that I don't have when I try one of those other coping mechanisms, the camouflaging, the denying, or the stuffing down. So like this is what I want more of in my life when difficult emotions come up. That's what I would like, is to more often sit and invite them to have tea for me. What I want here is really clear to me. What steps can you take right now to make staying with the difficult emotion happen for you more often? For me, what I'm noticing, this is starting to happen for me most often. I had an experience this past week where I received some criticism from a loved one over an area of my life where I had a story about myself that was positive. If you read my blog post, the week of the first week of October, 2021, if when the blog post comes out, it's going to be my story finding some equanimity with this difficult feedback. Um, to remember that this is a new habit. This is not how I've been doing this most of my life. And like any new habit, it's going to take time to automate, and it's going to be iterative. There will be times where I I sit and invite the emotion that sit and have tea with me. And there are going to be times where I feel like I blow it, and then I have to come back to it. Um, the other step is to practice responding with the invitation. So maybe the habitual response comes up first. That happens a lot for me. I go into whatever the habitual response is, just being the observer, noticing the habitual response, and then circling back and then saying, Mara, come sit for tea. Um, that's another step that I can put into place. I also think putting reminders for myself in strategic places where I'm frequently triggered. So this happens a lot when I'm driving, right? It happens a lot first thing in the morning and at night before I go to bed. So I've got a dry erase marker I keep in my bathroom, and I write these little love notes and messages to myself on my mirror. So the first thing I see in the morning, last thing I see before I go to bed at night, is this message of love from myself to myself. Um, but these could also have to do with how I address these difficult emotions. Come sit for tea might be a good message. Steering wheel of my car, right? If I'm going to have an angry response, it's often going to be when I'm driving. Often like really ridiculous anger, and it's my real feeling. So the feeling may or may not feel justified, but it is what I'm experiencing in that moment. So some kind of emotion to breathe and sit and invite it to have for tea might be a really good tool. Again, friends, if you have tools that have come up for you that would be useful, I would really encourage you. I would enjoy hearing what your experience was like, and also what your thoughts and what your plans are to take this moving forward. So great job with this Poise and Pen mindfulness of emotions practice today. Great job, friends. These practices, they're not easy. They can be really triggering and they're difficult for people. So the fact that you took time to sit and work through this practice speaks volumes of your love for yourself and your commitment to personal development. Again, my name is Chris. I'm with Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness, and this was our Poise and Pen mindfulness of emotions practice. You're doing great. Keep going.